Hey everyone, it's Joe here. I have a little thing I want to talk about today that's a little trick that I came up with, I don't know how many years ago. But what was happening is every once in a while as mixers, well, very often we're mixing stuff that we did not record, had no involvement in the recording. It's coming to us at the end, and we're dealing with what we have to work with. Sometimes, that's amazing, right? We pull up the faders and it's wow. And then some days we pull up the faders and it's like, whoa, everything that could be wrong is wrong. But one of the key offenders for me is guitars, for example. Whether it's a bad, just a cheap amp, whether it's a bad preamp, whether it's a bad converter, just an entry level, what do you call them, interface or something like that. I don't know what the problem may be, but sometimes we get genres of music where the track count is very high and our guitars are adding up to just really not very impressive. So we have to find a way to make it great. And Warren and I were just talking about this the other day. At times, there are times when we take our analog gear and we use it sparingly and safely. We just want a couple dB of compression to bring out the tube sound on an LA2A, right? We're using an intentionally clean preamp on this vocal and safe gain levels because we want a very clean signal. But very often what we're doing is we're using choice gear here and there, and we're abusing it, and we're hitting it very heavy. Whether that's heavy-handed compression, a lot of mic pre-gain, you're trimming it down with a lot of gain on the input to get flavor of the transformers. I mean, there's just times where we want to abuse gear and really pull the tone and the flavor out of it. I love gear like an SSL 4000, for example. We're on that top band on the EQ. You just have to dime that guy sometimes to get the sound you're looking for. And I love that. I love just wham, on certain guitar parts and things, just really having to get heavy-handed. Not all the time, but you guys, I think you know what I mean. Okay, all that to say, I was struggling with guitars one day, and I started thinking about ways to bring character and infuse character into some real sterile guitar part. These that we're going to hear today are not sterile. I would never play somebody's production and say, hey, this is an example of bad, this is an example of good, but it's just very big and busy, and so I thought it'd be a good one to use. Okay, so the thought is, if I take an EQ that I like the sound of, that imparts a tone, not a digital. I love FabFilter. I love my Avid, built-in EQ. I'm sure the other ones that come with other software is amazing. The Kirchhoff, the SSL EQ too. There's so many great vanilla plugins out there, and I use them every day. But there's a lot of times where vanilla is the last thing I want. I want to impart some kind of real tone. Okay, so that said, it hit me. If I pull a circuit that I like the sound of, and I really jack up the EQ, I mean, like I'm using big numbers, but it's broad stroke EQs. For example, something that has an adjustable Q that I can really make wide, or just a really round, wide circuit, like a knee, for example, that the bell shape and size stays the same as we turn it up and down, so I can get heavy-handed, so it's not going proportional on us. Okay, that said, if I'm taking four bands and I'm just wham, and forcing a whole lot of level into them and out, instead of getting a little peak here and a little peak here like we do on individual channels, hey, I need a little 3K, I need a little 6K. My idea was to make them really round and just boost everything by a bunch. So what is coming out on the other side isn't necessarily different in frequency response purely because of all the filters, but very different because I'm jamming all that tone through that circuit, and what's coming out is really just more of the sound of that circuit, right? So it's not going like this. If you look at it on a scope, it's more just like this, but it's just a whole lot of the tone of that piece. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And you can run that as a first step, like on a group that you're having problems with. And it's just a trick I use from time to time. This is not an every mix trick. This is a when needed trick. So let me show you what I've got going on. The guitars There's a bunch of passes and they're dry. The drums are still processed, the keyboards are still processed, but you hear that the guitars are otherwise unprocessed. I muted every EQ that was on the individual channel strip. Here we go. Okay, it's cool. It's a big production. I mean, there's lots of tracks. It's well produced. It's just that this is the sound of that genre. Lots of tracks, lots going on. Okay, so now let's focus on just the guitars. The tone of everything is great. Again, I would never use a bad sample. So what I'm going to do to them may be a little too heavy-handed, but I just want you to get the concept. Here's the Fuse Audio Labs 154, and this is one that I really like on this task. And a lot of times what I do, I don't boost this band quite as high. You'll see that I've got 9 dB going on every band, 12 and a half cycles, 4.3, 900 or 560, and 160. So again, I'm boosting a whole lot of stuff just so it's a bunch more level, but then I'm trimming it. Okay, so just abusing the gear. And I'm gonna let it play, unbypass this so you hear the difference sonically. Okay, what come out, even though we're not making sharp boosts and cuts and things like that, is very different because we're pulling the tone out of this circuit. One more time on this piece. It's more alive, it's richer. I mean, it's just everything about it is better. Now let's do the same thing to go back to a video that I did just recently talking about the flavors of analog circuits and how different they are from one to another. So I'm gonna keep with that theory here, and we're gonna hear an SSL 4K doing the same thing. So we're boosting 9 dB, and we're using a broad Q. What is it, like 0.8? Yeah, something like that. All right, here we go. A couple bars, then I'll unbypass it. Awesome. Very uniquely different than the one right before it. Okay, so, all right, so here we go with the SSL 4000E, and one of my favorite all-time channel strip EQs. Love this guy. Okay, so let's bypass it. Let's listen to a little bit of it. A little bit different frequency points I selected. You'll notice that on some of the other ones I was going a little lower on that mid band, but I'm going 1K here. It just sounds better than going like 560. I'll just show you the difference. Because it's such a broad Q, it's bringing up a little bit too much mud. So I'm going up around 1. So what we've got 10K, we've got 5K, we've got 1K, and 400. So we're just hitting every couple octaves really wide. So let's mute that. Now let's hear the curve bender. The curve bender is really great for this kind of a thing. I bypass it and let you hear it in action after a couple bars. Okay, I can't cut the curve bender's output as much as I'm boosting. So you'll notice it gets a little louder, but ignore that. But that's 10K, 4.2, 800 cycles, and 300 cycles wide. Okay, so that said, that's the theory. And sometimes maybe you need to use a little less. And a great tool for that kind of a thing is the API. And the reason is APIs are proportional. So when you boost 8 dB, 9 dB, the bell gets tighter. And that's not what I want. I want everything to be very broad and leave me a lot of room down line to EQ the individual channels accordingly. So here I'm only doing 4 dB, but just going through an API channel strip changes the sound for the better. And I'll let you hear it. Now, these guitars are well enough recorded that this quantity of boost is too much because it's not leaving me a lot of room down line for a lot of extra treatment. But you guys know what I'm talking about when you get stale guitars and bad guitars. And what I want to show you, one more thing, is that the idea of it being broad. Let me bring up just that. Here we go, SSL. And I'm going to bring up a meter here, and you're going to see a visual representation of what's happening without the EQ. Ready? Here we go. So every line here is 6 dB, okay? Now you'll see that white line, right, is our history. Now let me unbypass this, and remember, I've got it turned down, so the level is not boosted by 9 dB. The actual end result level is down a little bit, but check it out. Not as radically different as you think, is it? It's not just about the EQ curves. It's about the sound of the circuit. That's one thing that I wanted to show you. Yes, obviously there's a little bit of this going even with the broad strokes, but everything comes out more exciting and more analog. That's the key that I want to get across. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's not a trick for every mix, but every once in a while when you get in a group of keyboards or guitars that just, can we just say suck? This is something you can pull out of the toolbox and just see if it gets you running in a way that's like, okay, now I have something to start with. I hope it helps. Take care.